Welcome to another episode of Rimshots with Sean right here on Eastlink TV, obviously right after Friday Night Hockey. And I have a gentleman here that I've been following for a little while. I just told him before we started recording, he's a doppelganger for Zach Lacey, and everybody knows who Zach Lacey is gonna know exactly what I'm talking about. We have the one, the only Mr. Brendyn Creamer from The Coast magazine. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
I'm hanging in there. It's the temperature seems to have dropped. Just coming off of I guess a nice weekend, but it's pretty cold today, so we're getting through it. You're coming to us from the Mecca of Truro, correct?
That is absolutely correct. Yep.
So I guess for starters, Brendyn here in Eastlink, while we get going, how long have you been with the Coast and writing for the Coast?
I've been writing for the Coast since last May. So yeah, about 5 or 6 months now.
Um, so one of the things that I often, because I guess, a non-traditional form of media, the thing that I get an awful lot, and I'd love to get your opinion on, is that traditional forms of media are kind of, I don't want to say totally drying up, but they don't really seem to have as much maybe presence as they used to have. Do you feel the same way?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it. All we have to do is look at the recent saltwire shenanigans that were going on over there. I mean, traditional media for the last, I mean, since the digital age kind of occurred, has had to learn to adapt and evolve, and in some ways, it has not been doing that. I think we at the Coast have found our niche in a way. Like we've managed to switch from a weekly format to now a daily newsletter. That and we have thousands of subscribers that read it. So like it's weird, right? Like you very much have to find a way as traditional media to navigate your way through this
Sure.
this new digital age, right? It's interesting.
So one of the things that I've always liked about the Coast, and I'll be the first to admit, not everything the Coast that does sort of lines up with my beliefs, but that's fine. That's the beauty of life, right? Like everybody can have their own thing, and the research that is done. I mean, you can always take it to the bank that it's not it's not just something up in the clouds that somebody's forming an opinion on without the research. The research is definitely there. I mean, I think back to a number of years ago when Tim Bousquet did the concert scandal piece that is now infamous. It really broke a big thing in Halifax. What to you is the best? I guess the first thing I'll ask you in terms of your topics, in terms of what you do, what are there any, I guess, shackles on you? Do you have to follow certain things? Because we always hear news cycle. We always hear things don't meet news cycle. How does it work for you?
For me, I thankfully have a fair bit of free reign in what I can cover. I was kind of brought on to tackle a lot of arts and entertainment. So I mainly try and stick to that beat as much as possible, as you know. But I also sometimes get a little political and have to, write on politics, which is also
Yep.
in my wheelhouse anyway. So, yeah.
Well, you know what? Now that you said that, I'd love to get your opinion on this because I just saw it from the Coast newsletter. Proud subscriber. I can say it. I'm not somebody here that's that's doing this and not subscribing. But Andy Fillmore was voted in last week with, I think it was 15.6% of the eligible vote. Which I interviewed all the candidates on my podcast, and I had two goals. One was to make people aware of who was taking part in the election, and two was to help increase votership. Failed miserably at that because we lost 15 points. What's your, I guess, kind of take on that whole what we just went through? And then obviously the provincial government calls an election on Saturday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very interesting, right? Because a lot of the momentum that I was seeing from my perspective, and I didn't really cover the municipal beat too much, so
Right.
don't take my words too closely to heart. But a lot of the momentum, at least what I was viewing online, seemed to kind of be going in Wayne Mason's favor. So I can't say I was surprised to see that Andy Fillmore came out on top, because
Yep.
obviously a bigger name MP in the area makes sense. But what really had me going was the voter turnout, man. That was what I think it was reported. It was like a third of eligible voters came out,
It was
if
appalling,
that.
and I'll be honest with you, the ability to be able to do it in the comfort of your own home without having to go out to a polling station, and those numbers suggest to me that people didn't even get off their duff to register and do that. And, these will be the ones that, we know there's talk radio shows in Halifax. They'll be calling in complaining about bylaws and bike lanes and all kinds of stuff. Well, in my opinion, you didn't really take the time to go and make a difference. 15% of us did. But to me, that's appalling. It's really, really sad that that's what we see.
Absolutely, yeah, and I can feel for the people who are maybe politically disengaged in a way that's like, I don't know, like they're kind of sick of seeing the same thing over and over again. I can totally get that, but also at the same time, voting is a political tool, and if you're over the age of 18, you have it. You know what I mean?
Right. No, I do. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, here's the thing, and I mean, this is just kind of check a box here for this segment, but the big thing for me, I think the Coast coined the term Halley famous. Now, I could be wrong in that, but I just remember seeing that in the Coast quite a bit. And I found my takeaway was if you were a new person that wanted to run for city council, you were going to have a very rough time, A, because you weren't a known commodity, and Halifax loves their known commodities, and B, the incumbents were able to basically use whatever money was left over from previous elections to get out of the gate with all their, I guess, campaign stuff, posters and lawn signs. Did you feel the same way? And that's not a leading question. You just tell me what your 2 cents was.
And again, I think that comes back to, like, I didn't really follow the municipal election as closely as that, because our reporter Matt was more on that stuff. All I can say in terms of the municipal election really is that I'm surprised to see that some of the faces got in, especially after looking at some of the responses on the Coast questionnaire that we did in the lead up to the election. Some of the responses we got back from that were I guess I'm speaking from my own opinion here, but really well put, and others were far from it. And we got a nice mixture of those types of candidates that ended up getting elected. So in terms of what you're talking about, I'm not 100% sure, just because I didn't dig into that part of the election.
Sure.
But it was very interesting to watch anyway from a distance.
Well, and I mean, as you're saying that, and I mean, and surveys are one of those things where you get an answer to somebody on a particular day, and that might not be the end result. But we all know this. So, but it's a good barometer where people's heads are at, as things are going through the stream, right? So going forward, this will be the last political question, but just your thoughts. You're going to be hearing quite a bit of this over the next little while, but your thoughts on this? They're calling it a snap election call, which I think is on the 26th of November.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I wrote a little article about this. I think it went up on Friday. I kind of share my speculative opinions there for sure. But just to, reiterate, I guess, I can't say I'm surprised, but at the same time, the first law that the Houston government passed when they came into government was, we're setting fixed election dates. It's the fair thing to do. And they had a lot of pushback on that from what I was, from the research I did looking into all this.
Sure.
And so to kind of see that flip back and them say, okay, well, we're going to call a snap election. It's weird, but also at the same time, I've heard opinions, and I sort of agree with them. At the end of the day, we all get to vote anyway. And, you get to have your opinion heard, whether it's November 2024 or July 2025. So I guess we'll see what happens. I mean, from the polling I saw that came out last summer from one of the research institutes that I look closely at, the Conservatives have over 50% of people in Nova Scotia. I think it'll be in their favor, but it's still interesting to see, like, okay, you already have, I believe it's now 34 seats in the House. So it's like, why are we doing this? I guess just to be able to take that other 4 years of power and get that quickly. I don't know. I'm still kind of up in the air and why they're doing this. And maybe a smarter political analyst would be able to better answer that question. But
that's fair. And I mean, we like I think it'll unfurl kind of as this thing goes on, because the the mudslinging hasn't really officially commenced yet, but I'm sure, or started yet, but I'm sure it will. We're going to take a little break here on Eastlink TV. I'm here with Brendyn Creamer from the Coast Magazine. We're back after this. Welcome back to Rimshots. It's on right here on Eastlink TV. Obviously, after Friday Night Hockey, which is, it's funny, Brendyn. I get a lot of people that are now sending me video that they're in a bar downtown and they're watching Friday Night Hockey, and then they're showing a picture of me. So we might get on the TV sometime soon. One of the reasons why I wanted to reach out to the Coast, I started getting the subscribe newsletter, and there's really a lot in it, right? There's something for everyone. How do you folks put that together? Is that where everybody kind of puts their thing in? You have a deadline just for my readers, because it's really in depth. I mean, everything from what's going on at City Hall to what ships are going to be in the harbor. I mean, it all points in between, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the bigger stories are usually worked on by reporters such as myself. We obviously have our reporters, Matt and Lauren, who do excellent work on the daily. So we always try to produce something daily on our end. A lot of that stuff, such as the ship report and that that news gathering that we do in the newsletter, it's done by our wonderful editor Julie, who takes a ridiculous amount of time to put all this together for the folks' viewing pleasure. So it's personally, like when I moved to Nova Scotia a couple of years ago, one of the first things I was told was like, you need to get on the Coast newsletter. I was like, oh, okay, I've never heard of this before. What is this? It's just an aggregate for so much news, and on top of that, you have the articles that we write ourselves, which are usually as in depth as they can be. So it's personally, I might be a little biased, but I like the Coast. I like it.
Well, so one of the things for me, and I was talking about having this chat with you with somebody on the weekend. They're like, oh, well, the Coast is left. It's like, you know what? I don't think the Coast is totally left, because there's been some things in there that I've seen that are like, way far of the other side. I think for the most part, you guys, we're back to political, and I don't mean to, but I think for the most part, you're pretty much center in terms of what you put out there. I mean, you obviously have to be, pretty mindful of, getting the narrative out there with like, trying to, be radio gaga and can control everybody in their thoughts, right?
Yeah, absolutely. My personal policy when it comes to that, obviously, I have my own personal political beliefs, but outside of that, when I'm, as a reporter, as a journalist, I like to try and dig down to what the actual issues are, what is impacting the most common person, and whether that leans left or right. My job is to report on that, and I don't want to speak for my colleagues, but I would imagine that they would say something similar.
Okay, so with that, do you find sometimes, like, I'm assuming sometimes you'll see something and you'll run with it. I mean, a good friend of mine is a reporter, and he has to pitch a story to his news director as an example, and then they decide whether or not, okay, well, you're going to get to do that, or we're just going to give you this one. So I'm assuming you get to pitch ideas, and if they determine that it's newsworthy, then you go and you run it. Have you ever, or I'm sure you have, but got into a story and you're going like, okay, A, this isn't going the way that I thought, and B, I really don't believe in the topic, who the topic's about, that type of thing, and you're kind of wrestling with almost like a morality thing, but you have to report on it anyway?
Oh man, yeah, that's the story of my life right there.
Okay.
Before I was with the Coast, I was the lead editor of the Churro News here in good old Churro, and
Yeah.
there were several stories where you'd get into it, you'd be talking to somebody, and obviously you come in with your own preconceived notions, your own preconceived biases, and you either have those completely reinforced by what you're
Right.
hearing from people, whether they're being genuine or not, or they get completely tore down, and suddenly it's either like, I don't want to run the story anymore. This is too much. Or,
Yeah.
I don't, want to come off as this is just reinforcing my bias. This is my bias. Here's an article with just my bias. So
Sure.
it's so weird. And I mean, you can never really, unless you're really grilling someone as hard as possible on whatever topic you're talking about, it's genuinely difficult to tell when people are being genuine, I think.
Right.
So there have been quite a few cases in just my life as a reporter that's that's been the case, right? Like I've heard from people what they're saying is I'm coming away and I'm like, I don't think that's I don't think that's true. I don't know if I can prove that's untrue, but I don't think that's true.
Well,
So
I'd like to give you an example of something that happened to me personally because I think it's great sometimes that people stress in the media strong, and then sometimes you just shake your head. So a number of years ago, I was named tournament marshal for the said hockey tournament. I used to do a lot of stuff in hockey. Anyway, that day I get interviewed on the CBC about tournament, and the question came up about fighting in hockey because Bobby Smith, who owned the Loose Heads at the time, had an opinion on it, and I made a comment that what really wasn't that big of a deal. I just basically said, give the officials more leeway to make the call. That's all I said. Well, nobody actually read it. They read the headline, which was basically hockey official says officials are biased, which I didn't say at all. And if you read it, and so it blew up, and for the entire day, this nice thing kind of went sideways. One of the people said to me, well, if it was in the CBC, it has to be true. Do you find, and that's not to dump on the CBC, but do you find sometimes with not the Coast necessarily, but with other forms of media, just lock, stock, and barrel people, that's the only place they're getting their information is the media? They're not like researching maybe a little more in depth?
What I will say is that, again, each individual reporter, you know this yourself as somebody who does media, comes in with their own notions, own biases, and stuff like that happens where you have this headline that's they might have tweaked the meaning a little bit there to get some views.
Sure.
Yeah, it happens, and it's obviously in your case that's kind of disastrous consequence, honestly. But I guess
it was a fun day. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, but I think when it comes more generally, honestly, I might be wrong on this. I think a lot of people are just getting their news from Facebook. Even if, Facebook has kind of, slammed the door on traditional news, a lot of people are going on news and hearing from their friends. That's I think been the case for the last 10 years. And obviously that creates a lot of a lot of negativity when it comes to what's there, I guess. But in terms of general, like the general traditional media, whether it be us, whether it be CBC, I think honestly, it usually comes down to the individual reporter. Obviously, there's an editor looking over them, okaying it. But I know as an editor myself, or having been an editor myself, that can get missed. They can get lost in context, right? So I think cases like that are just it's unfortunate. I wish it didn't happen, but sometimes it does. Right? It gets missed.
And you know what? And that's fair, man. That's fair because I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's like everything. You can't please everybody. So we're gonna take a break here. Going to be our last break. If you believe this has been going very, very fast. We're here on Eastlink with Brendyn Creamer from the Coast. We're back after this. Well, welcome back to Rimshots with Sean right here on Eastlink TV. Hard to believe we're on segment 3. It's always fun when we do this. I'm here with Brendyn Creamer from the Coast magazine, and I reached out to you for a couple specific reasons. But one of the things is I was going through the newsletter and the subscription. You started doing reviews on the best of candidates, and as I started reading them, I was like, okay, you know what? This guy's actually really paying attention to what's going on here because I know if I've judged stuff for like ECMAs, I've been asked to review stuff for record labels, and it's really hard to deep dive into because you get so much of it and to segment your time. So first off, it's a statement of good on you because, to me, it appears that's exactly what's taking place. You're taking, the time to do it. And how do you do that? Because it's a lot of information that's coming at you. Or is this a job that people think you do 2 hours a day that you're really doing 60 hours a day?
I wouldn't say 60 hours a day. But yeah, I try and put as much time into it as I can in terms of listening to what's out there, especially in terms of local music, of course. Yep. And that's kind of contrary to how I work, actually, because usually I'm a person I'm a big album guy, so like I'll find an artist, listen to one album exclusively for like 2 months and then probably nothing else. So really it was with this job that I had to very much start exploring my horizons in terms of what's out there locally, and typically that does take the form in listening to as much as I can in someone's discography. And obviously forming my own opinions around it. But yeah, especially with this best of Halifax stuff, um, there's just so much great local music out there. It's and having come from a very small town and in Newfoundland where we kind of had very sparse local acts, it's
Right.
so cool to be able to see this. I guess this movement of local music in Halifax and Nova Scotia more generally.
One of the things I will always say about the coast, and I've said this for years because I've been in this business the music business a long time. But the coast was always like Toronto used to have these magazines where you knew where you were going because you could grab the magazine off the rack, you look at the event listings, and the coast always had that, right? So it was always up to date on who was playing where, and there was a vibe, and the city Halifax right now to me, I think you nailed it. There's a lot of good music. The word doesn't seem to be getting out as much and as well as it used to. Why do you think that is?
That's hard to say. I'm not really sure, to be honest. I feel like I don't know. Like maybe it is just people are less interested. Maybe it's that there's not enough media kind of covering that. But I know from what people like you do, it's what I do, what
Right.
other media people do in Halifax, in and around Halifax. That
Sure.
is, it doesn't seem to be the case. It's a complicated question. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And the funny thing is, and this is what I'm up against quite a bit. I mean, my podcast was, it was a result of a musician that was playing a bunch of shows every year that couldn't play because everything was shut down. So I just decided to start interviewing my radio friends, and I'm a COVID project. There's no two ways about it. And we had some success, but then all of a sudden we got on somebody's radar who took us national, who took us international. So what I find now is if I spend too much time on the local stuff, the international people go, "Huh? Who's that?" And the local people, honest to God, they light me up because they think I'm too big for my britches. And I think that's a Halifax thing. You try to do what you can, but you can only hit the ones that are gonna, I guess, work with you, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, there's so many good artists out there. I genuinely wish I could cover every single one in some way, do an in-depth,
Right.
interview and review on, a bunch of artists locally that I love. But you're right though. Like you kind of have to settle on the ones that are not only willing to work with you, but are, kind of have that potential to uh in your eyes anyway, be able to get somewhere a little higher than just the local scene, especially if you're in a case like yourself where it's like you have to meet these national and international demands, right?
Yep. No, you're not wrong. So and one of the things that I'll ask you this question, and if you don't want to answer it, it's fine because it could have the potential for you to get a ton of emails, and you might not want that. But if somebody wanted to contact you to have you do a piece on them, do you actually go out and look for it? Do you accept submissions? Do you encourage submissions? How do you go about it? Because obviously you've got a life to live in, as well, right?
No, absolutely. I encourage submissions. Anybody wants to send me their music, go on ahead, please.
Yep.
My email is brendyn@thecoast.ca. Forward it over. Again, obviously I can't promise anything
Sure.
until I listen to it, until I do a bit of background research. But I'm always on the lookout for new music anyway. So if people want to inundate me with emails, people already do it anyway. So feel free.
You heard it here, folks. Part of the reason why I want to do this piece, and specifically for Eastlink, because what I focus on is Nova Scotia and Atlantic Canada and whatnot, and the coast is really, well, they have been for years and years and years and years and years, a staple of East Coast. Born and bred in Halifax, and they've had to do a little bit, I guess, of a pivot like everybody else, but the coast seems to kind of maybe have weathered that storm, and they're doing some cool things that maybe you see in the salt waters of the world not being able to pull off. Why do you think that is? You think that's because of the audience? You think that's because of the way that the whole vibe of the magazine? What do you think?
I think it's a little bit of everything. Having witnessed the saltwire ship go down from within, I could see a lot of contrasts from how the coast kind of weathered that storm, even though I hadn't been part of the team when they did have to kind of get through that COVID period. It seems to me that the decision to switch to a newsletter was definitely just an email newsletter was the way to go.
Yep.
We again, thousands of people read it every day. That's like this is intense. On the other hand, you have and I don't mean to say anything too negative, but Saltwire, who has this paid subscription to view articles, you're in my opinion reducing the amount of people who's going to be like, yeah, okay, I'll give that a chance. I don't know. I'm not a business person. I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to media business, but at the same time, it's
you're speaking some truth here, I think, because if you got to pay for something before you even get it, and then part of your model is pay for it, but then expect people to pay to advertise. Well, I think, and the whole exposure versus whatever. I mean, it's just like if you're getting something for free and it engages you, I think you're going to be more apt to say, you know what, I'll spend a few bucks to advertise on that platform. And everybody wants numbers, but more importantly, they want engagement. Like the social media world is always get your first 1,000 engaged followers, right? And a lot of people think, oh my God, I just had a video that, did 70,000 views, but if they're not engaged, who cares? It doesn't matter. So maybe that's what it is. You're more astute than I think you're letting yourself on. Last question, man. So just coming to you the next little bit, what can we expect to see? Are you, do you have a backup of stories or you just kind of take them as they come your way?
A little bit of both. So obviously we're in the throes of the Best of Halifax right now. I don't know when this airs, but we will have voting going on for that till November 3rd at 11:59 p.m. I want to say.
I'll put that in the tag.
Yeah. So we've got that going on. I'm writing plenty of pieces still on Best of Halifax. That's in my radar. And so is at least partially, possibly more commentary on the very fascinating political provincial election. And of course, I want to encourage everybody, please take a look at the Coast Daily newsletter. I think we do great stuff personally. Again, a little biased, but
it's not. I'll agree with it. I'm not just saying that because I said Julian too, just saying how much I enjoyed. So, Brendyn, I want to thank you for doing this and appearing here on Eastlink TV. And ladies and gentlemen, as always, you go to the Barstools and Band Talk Rimshots with Sean Facebook page, social media, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Subscribe to it all because that's how we get the word out. We'll see you next week, gang.